We continue with our coverage. We know Sakina is also at the Cape Town City Hall. She spoke to us a little earlier on, painting that rather wet picture. The sun hadn't even risen yet. Just setting the scene, really looking at what is transpiring, the build-up. It seems all systems are in place and we are ready for action. President Cyril Ramaphosa convening that joint sitting of the newly established two houses of parliament to deliver that opening parliament address for the 7th administration today. Sakina, once again, good morning. Sakina Kamwendo is at the Cape Town City Hall to bring us the latest once again. Sakina, you painted that picture a little earlier on. It seems like the sun is slowly setting over the, rising over the horizon. Perhaps you could talk to us about what is happening. I know there also said to be some protests happening today. Has the rain, deterred any of those action? Talk us through what's the latest coming through.
Well, thank you, Liesel, and of course, welcome back. We've stepped out of the rain into the Cape Town City Hall, and as we spoke earlier, showed you a few shots from in here, the Nelson Mandela in Cape Town Legacy exhibition. So we have now stepped into the space, so it is drier now. And as promised earlier, we will be keeping you abreast of all the developments. You mentioned the protests, Liesel. We see those every time, whether it's the opening of Parliament or the State of the Nation address. You will always have those protests. There are also a few sidebar meetings that will be happening. The Progressive Caucus will be having a meeting at 12 today. So we'll keep our eyes and ears staged on all of those to make sure that we keep you up to breast with all of those developments. But of course, I promised we will have the Speaker of the National Assembly with us here this morning, Ms. Thoko Didiza. Thanks so much for coming through. And it's a wet day. You didn't order good weather for us, but I suppose the show goes on.
Well, I must say that it is a good day. It's an important day, not because of the rainy weather, which is welcome actually for the Western Cape, because it's the rainy season at the time at which it's supposed to be. They usually have their winter rains, and that's what keeps agriculture going. But it's an important day today, because it's also the opening address of Parliament by the President. It's also the Nelson Mandela International Day, which is also an important part of our history in reminding us of who Mandela was, what he did, the legacy he left for us.
Now, Mr. Didiza, of course, we were here in February, and we've been using this particular precinct since the fire in the original Parliament precinct. But tell us, how far are those renovations? And of course, how long do you think it's going to take before they are complete?
I must say that because it's the heritage side, it does take a bit of time, because even in the demolition phase, you have to have the curators from the Heritage Society to be able to see whether are there any artifacts that can be saved that needs to be retained. But now we've started the process where demolition is going to commence, and after that, the commencement of the rebuilding of Parliament. In our view, and in terms of the plan, that's likely to be finished mid-2026.
Mr. Didiza, of course, when we were here for the State of the Nation address in February, the budget, we were told, was around, at least the cost was around 6 million rand or so. So how much has been budgeted this time around for the opening of Parliament?
We've budgeted between 8 to 14 million. Obviously, once the expenditure has been reconciled, we'll be able to say how much was actually spent. We do so because there are some of the incidences that might require funding which we might not have foreseen earlier on in our own planning.
So talking about expenditure within Parliament itself, with the expansion of the Cabinet came the expansion of the committees as well. I believe we've gone up from 27 to about 30 committees. So have you been able to house them? How have that impacted on your expenditure?
I must say that we have been able to renovate about 14 committee rooms, which have allowed for the rotation so that all committees can actually be able to meet at the time at which they meet. Even in the past, we've never had all committees sitting at one time. They would actually rotate on the days in which they meet. So far, we've been able to do the committee work that was necessary for the budget debates that have just been held.
Will we have the full ceremonial format today, given the weather? I did see yesterday some of the practice runs being carried out, but given the weather, if it is raining, will we still have that full program?
I must say that we will reconsider, as well as the armed forces who do the parade, will reconsider whether at the time at which, the drills have to take place, is the weather okay for such to be done? Obviously, there might be some adjustment. We've done the fallback plan on what we will do should the rain be more than what we expect at that particular moment.
And of course, speaking to that, so in February, the Imbongi was from Mpumalanga because there's a rotation system with the languages. So which language has been chosen for the opening today?
Today is Chivenda. The Mbongi will be in Chivenda. And as you say, it is always on a rotational basis. So this time was for Chivenda language in terms of presentation by our Mbongi.
Just getting back to the operational side of things within the National Assembly. Quite a few new members, new parties, and all of that had to be accommodated. What have been some of the hiccups that you've experienced?
Well, I must say that onboarding will always have some little hiccups where maybe not at an immediate, everybody would have what they would expect, such as your office space or even accommodation. But I must say that it hasn't been something out of the ordinary. We have been able to have our session for induction of new members, which took place week-long, which enabled members to actually understand what are the rules, how are they made, what is expected for them in terms of, undertaking their work as members of parliament. So that has been done. And during committees, we've actually seen that some of that preparatory work was necessary.
So I was speaking earlier in our opening segment about what I've noticed in some of the committee meetings where there was concern expressed, complaints, if you will, about the translation services, because there was complaint that there was only Afrikaans and English and no other languages being accommodated. And we have 12 official languages in South Africa. So is there a staff shortage? And if there is, how are you planning to address that?
Well, we are planning to address it. One of the challenges we've had is that we had sittings in 3 simultaneous venues at a given time on the budget debate. So that has impacted somehow in our staffing levels. But we have been having translation from, vernacular to English. The only challenge is that vice versa from English to vernacular, that's where the problem has been. And we are addressing that as Parliament because it is important, as you say, that we must address all the official languages of our country, which are 12, actually 11 plus the sign language. So we've got 12 languages that we need to make sure that we promote equally.
And just finally, about the rules for tonight's sitting. It is a joint sitting, and of course, we now know that nobody is allowed to interrupt the president during the speech. But just talk to us about those new rules and how they're going to be enforced tonight.
Well, I must say that there are joint rules of the joint sitting, which indicates how those sittings are supposed to be conducted. And members, through their representatives in the Rules Committee, they are aware of that, and we hope that everybody will abide by it.
In case they don't?
In case they don't, there are processes in the rules of how you deal with, disorderly conduct, if it's disorderly. But there might be a point of privilege, which we would listen to and see whether it is relevant, but I don't foresee any of that. But if it does, we will be able to address it.
Well, I'm sure we'll speak again later. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Ms. Thoko Didiza, there, just bringing us up to speed with the preparations for tonight's opening of Parliament address by President Cyril Ramaphosa, taking place at 7 p.m. and we'll be here all day to make sure you are abreast of developments. And with that, it's back to studio.